Politics now, and the ANC has asked provinces to submit the names of those in the party charged with corruption or other serious crimes by Thursday, 5 p.m. The party also wants the names of those who allegedly committed corruption, as well as those reported or implicated in such practices. It follows the party's National Executive Committee outcomes last month. It's raised not only debate within the governing party, but it seems also serious divisions. The party's Northern Cape leader and premier believes the various groups within the ANC could signal the start of something more, the formation of a new party. eNCA's Govan Whittles takes the conversation further with the ANC's Zuma Sol, who's also the premier of the Northern Cape. Govan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Tulisizwe. And I am joining you from the seat of the provincial government here in Kimberley, in the Northern Cape, for what we hope will be an insightful political conversation with the chairperson of the ANC in the Northern Cape, Dr. Zuma Sol. Dr. Sol, thank you so much for your time. You've recently penned what would be an incisive opinion piece warning that the radical economic transformation forces may be a prototype for a new party. And I'd like to begin the interview with this. How firm is your view that this is a prototype for a new party? And on what basis did you reach that conclusion?
No, thank you very much, and you guys are welcome to the Northern Cape. And thank you very much for the effort to come and have such engagements with us. We are not used to this because we are just a small, ignored province in the scheme of things. But the essence of the article was informed by the NEC decision. I think that's the starting point. The NEC, in its deliberations, characterized what the RET is, RET grouping. I think one have to make a clear distinction between radical economic transformation and RET grouping, which is a group which the NEC says it's distinct and it's got a discernible network within the organization. And what that actually means is that we've got a grouping within the organization which has an organizational backbone, which has got its own structures, which has got its own networks that contest the space with the ANC. What that means is that you've got an organization within the organization, and that is something which no self-respecting organization can tolerate. Hence, the NEC took a decision that this should come to an end.
What's the evidence that this will lead to the formation of a new party?
Jack, this is basically how prototype organization function. Number one, they use the womb of the host. Here the host is the ANC, because the RET is within the ANC. The host is the ANC. So they use the ANC to incubate and to reach a stage where they are comfortable to break ranks with it. That's what happened to the PAC in the late 50s. The PAC effectively broke away from the ANC in 1959. And in 1960, they could arrange a country-wide protest that led to the Sharpeville massacre, which means by the time they left the movement, they were already a formidable organization which actually used the ANC to incubate for about 4 to 5 years. So it's more or less the same even with COPE. The ANC struggled for almost a year to get Terra, together with his group, expelled from the movement. But what they did is to use a period of more than a year to create a sense of discontentment within the ranks of the movement, creating a basis for building a new organization. Exactly the same with the EFF with regard to the issue of economic freedom in our lifetime. So you use the host to incubate, create structures, so that by the time you break away, at least you've got a semblance of existence that can take you forward.
But what's different this time, Chair, is that there are a number of observations from within the ANC that this is already happening. And there is a structure of the ANC, the MK Veterans Council, which has clearly stated that it wants the RET grouping, and specifically Ace Magashule, to leave the ANC. Do you believe that they should be kicked out of the party?
But that's very close to the NEC decision. What the NEC said is that this RET grouping must be aborted, because we can't have an organization within an organization. That is corrosive, that is degenerative.
Do you identify the Secretary General as being part of that grouping?
No, I won't necessarily identify the Secretary General as part of the grouping, but what I'm saying is that there are people who have mentioned that I'm the RET chairperson of this province and I'm the RET national chairperson, which means they've got structures, they've got chairpersons in different provinces and in different regions. And I firmly believe that we have to activate our DC processes, and all those who have identified themselves to be aligned to this RET grouping, they should be subjected to organizational processes. But the primary thing that the ANC should do is to abort it.
Kick them out of the party then?
Is to abort the RET grouping. Yes, that's what we are supposed to be doing.
There are a few other personalities in this group, and the former President Jacob Zuma being described as the father of RET. And we've seen at his public appearances and outside his home, people who defend him say they are RET forces that are doing so because they don't believe any other defense will come from the ANC. Now we've seen the State Capture Commission applying for the former president to be jailed, and no response yet from the provinces of the ANC. What's your view as the Northern Cape on your former president of the ANC possibly facing jail time? Are you going to defend him, or do you believe that this should happen?
No, our responsibility is not to mobilize and organize the organizational machinery against the judiciary. We are sympathetic around the legal challenges which the former president is confronted with. Former leaders of the ANC should serve as a reservoir of knowledge to whom at any given time the organization should go for advice and guidance. But what we've picked up is that the former president, JZ, is confronted with a multitude of challenges from different fronts. And obviously opportunistic groupings like the RET groupings would make use of that to try and sow some discontentment within the ranks of the organization based on those challenges. I can't remember any single occasion where the ANC has taken a decision of saying that we've got nothing to do with the challenges that Comrade JZ is confronted with. We still regard him as a former president of the movement. He's an elder, and all of us, we've got high respects for him. But what is important in how he deals with the current challenges he's confronted with, he must ensure that that does not impugn on the image of the movement, because our primary focus now is to enhance the integrity of the movement.
What do you think the implications are of a former president of the ANC possibly going to jail on the organization?
It's massive implications. It's not something that can be taken lightly.
You think a split is likely?
Lula going to jail in Brazil, it was a massive issue. It's not something that we can take very lightly. It can cause a great deal of discontentment within the ranks of the movement, and depending on how leadership decides to manage that. But if it can be avoided, we must do anything within our powers to ensure that we avoid it by ensuring that the former president cooperate with the Zondo Commission, and he also obey outcomes of the judicial process.
Let's move to a more likely scenario now, which is the end of the 30 days of the step-aside resolution. And at this point, there are no indications that the Secretary General intends to step aside. His last on-record comment is that he'll be consulting some of the elder leaders. Does the ANC-NEC, in your view, or will the ANC-NEC be able to suspend the Secretary General if he refuses to step aside? And are you concerned that it might lead to mass resignations in the NEC and a special Congress?
You see, the biggest problem here is aggregation of the Nasrec Conference resolution and the NEC decision to the Secretary General. There's a whole host and many other comrades who are affected by that decision, and that decision was not made for the Secretary General. So the NEC has taken a decision that all those who are charged and facing criminal charges, they must step aside within 30 days. And our minimum expectations is that they will do the decent thing, observe the discipline of the organization, and just step aside. That's what we are expecting.
But the most high-profile one who's implicated is the Secretary General.
Yes.
And the question is, does the NEC have the ability to suspend him and follow through on that ability?
But the Constitution of the ANC allows the NEC to do that. But there are also guidelines which the NEC have adopted. I'm certain you know about that. In terms of the guidelines, it's quite a straightforward process. If somebody is charged, the next thing that should happen is that that individual must immediately step aside. And if that individual does not step aside, then the ANC should invoke a summary suspension. So that is where we are heading to. If you refuse to step aside, what should follow is a summary suspension. And the National Executive Committee has got powers from the constitution of the ANC to do that.
All of this is happening while the ANC's branches and regions and even towards provinces are going to conferences, they're auditing their membership, and this is the time when the Secretary General and his office have massive influence over the party. And here in your own province, the comments that you've made now will not be received well by some in your province. We know that the JTG region is seen to be sympathetic to the Secretary General, half of the Francis Brad region as well. And your province is going to the conference. So, Chairperson, are you not just saying these things because you want to be re-elected as Chairperson and you want to clearly show that you are against the RAT forces?
No. The NEC took a decision around the issue of the RAT forces. When I wrote the article, it was basically to elaborate and explain the decision of the NEC, and in that process also characterizing the RAT for what it is. And that characterization of the RAT is completely in agreement with the decision that the NEC has taken. So as we are going to the provincial conference and regional conference, there are different permutations that will be there. But those permutations, that does not mean that we should lose focus on the fact that we should try as far as possible to be principled leaders. NEC decisions must be implemented and conference decisions must be implemented. Step aside, it's not about which region likes it or which region does not like it. The National Executive Committee of the ANC took a decision that those who are charged must step aside. And that is a conference resolution. We can't do anything with that conference resolution up until the next conference. There's nothing that we can do with it.
And of course, by this Thursday, the provinces should be submitting names to the National Office on the people who are expected to step aside. And
yes,
those names are being compiled by the provinces. And we heard from the ANC that they believe the resolution of conference includes people who have been implicated in commissions of inquiry. Yeah. So I'm asking whether or not, do you give an undertaking not to use the list process that you will be sending to Luthuli House to deal with your opponents within the province who are clearly mobilizing to contest against you at the conference?
No, that will be completely uncalled for. I don't think we can sink to that level. That's gutter politics. That will be gutter politics from our side. I think conference resolution is quite clear. It says those who are charged must step aside. Those who are confronted with serious allegations must go to the Integrity Commission. So there's two scenarios. So we received a letter from the Office of the Secretary General, and those names were submitted to the Office of the Secretary General of the ones that were charged. The letter was very specific. The ones that were charged who are directly affected by the 30-day period. So we've not received a letter around individuals that are facing serious allegations. But in terms of the guidelines that the NEC adopted, if I'm faced with a serious allegation, I must go to the Integrity Commission. It does not say people who are faced with serious allegation, they must step aside. They must go to the Integrity Commission. And then it will depend on the recommendations that will be made by the Integrity Commission.
Thank you. Finally then, Chairperson, coming back round to the RAT as a prototype for a new party, and your assertion that they should be aborted from the party. There are a number of regions in your province that would be sympathetic to the RAT forces, but I'd like you to speak to what do you believe, or how do you believe it, your comment that they should be aborted from the ANC will be received in the Northern Cape and for its unity, and what exactly do you mean by they should be aborted from the party? How will that abortion happen?
Check, the ANC, we can't continue. Not only the ANC, I'm saying any self-respecting organization can't continue to sustain activities of a prototype of a model of an organization within itself that its actions within the organization are degenerative and seek to destroy the party. The reason why I'm saying RET grouping is different from a faction and a lobby group. Factions and lobby group within an organization, they contest for political space and power amongst themselves. RET does not contest for political power against another faction. It's contesting for political power in space against the ANC, against the host. So that is dangerous, because that in itself would lead to a zero-sum game where the ANC will be seriously weakened, and we need a very strong and united African National Congress to fight corruption, and we need a very strong and united African National Congress for us to implement our program of radical socio-economic transformation. There is no radical socio-economic transformation that will take place in this country by a deeply divided African National Congress.
So how do you abort them?
We need a very strong African National Congress to execute a program of radical socio-economic transformation, and we should be able to mobilize the critical mass of South Africans behind that program. It's not our program. It should be a program driven by South Africans behind the leadership of the African National Congress. So one way of aborting them, all those who identifies with it, people are openly identifying with it. This thing has got a logo. It's an organization within the organization. The ANC's got its logo. They've got their own logo. They've got their own structures. And their network is discernible. They go out on public spaces and say, I'm the provincial chairperson of RET, which means they've got parallel structures that coexist with ANC structures. So you can easily identify them, subject them to disciplinary processes, and let those processes basically deal with them. But there is absolutely no way, if we say we are self-respecting, there is no way we can coexist with another organization within ourselves.
Thank you so much. It's the chairperson of the Northern Cape, Dr. Zamani Saul, talking frankly to us about how he envisions the party should deal with the RET forces and also a few of the personalities. Tulisizo, it's back to you.
Yeah, Govan Whittle's live for us in Kimberley there with Zamani Saul, the Premier of the Northern Cape, as well as the provincial chairperson of the ANC, not mincing his words, not backing away from his views on the so-called RET forces within the ANC, characterizing them as an organization within an organization. What's that they say? Like sand through the hourglass. So are the days of the ANC. Let's see how this unfolds within the African National Congress.